Welcome to today's podcast. Thanks for joining me as always. So at the time of this recording, we're getting in the heat of springtime, post-tax season. So hopefully you got flowers blooming, trees blossoming, and maybe the other way around. But either way, it's you're seeing rebirth and growth. And what happens usually around this time too, and I think my wife sort of alluded to, is time to do some spring cleaning. And, you know, sometimes we can get busy in life and such, and we can start accumulating things, and things maybe don't get as organized as you'd like. And it would remind me of something that I've seen more recently in certain conversations I've had with people. And it almost relates to that. You know, everyone probably has this kind of junk drawer of stuff, right? And sometimes it stays organized and you kind of know what's in there. And then all of a sudden you turn around a month or two later or whatever year later, and there's like a mishmash of things. Not even sure what's in there. And I'm like, and I have to do this sort of a deep dive and search to find anything like a pen or a sticky note. And it's can become disorganized and it wastes time, right? And, you know, unfortunately, what I've seen is in dealing with folks, and even for myself personally, that this could happen for us in our financial lives, where we can create an equivalent sort of junk drawer of types of things in our lives. And independently, they seem good and nothing like we've done anything wrong. But the world is disconnected and uncoordinated. And what ends up happening in this situation is people get uneasy. They're not sure what they have. They may not even have a cohesive strategy and plan and system in place. And so it creates some level of stress. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, also creates inefficiencies and loss and things that are putting people at risk. And sometimes if you're not looking at it, will unfortunately show up in the worst way. And, you know, I hear this now as I'm talking to folks that they have an inkling. They feel like something's not quite right, but they can't pinpoint it because they're not sure. And even though they're doing so many good things, and that might be you listening, like you've got so many good pieces, but there's still some uneasiness as to what's going on. And now as I'm coming through it, post-tax season, talking to folks who now recognize, hey, I've done so well, but I've got this significant tax problem. I think that's a sort of indicative and potentially broader problem around a system that maybe has not been thoroughly designed and planned for properly, and causes these sorts of things. And I look at it too, because I went through that for myself. It's not a fault to you as a successful person in your life, professional, business owner, trying to manage all of these things. I think that's just part of the design of how the system functions today, broadly speaking, right? And it shows up in a whole host of ways. And so today I want to kind of talk through that a bit more, hopefully enlighten you to start thinking about this a little differently, even for your own financial life. Because for what I've come across, especially for people who are successful in their own right, obviously intelligent, doing a lot, like I said, a lot of good things. Their worlds look like this. They may have multiple advisors in their world, right? And they could show up in a fragmented way. They have a CPA that's helping them get their taxes done, right? Maybe some light tax strategy potentially in the mix. Maybe a financial advisor that maybe is hyper-focused on managing their investments. That's their core element of what they help do. You maybe have someone on the side who's helping them with different insurances. Maybe there's a property casualty, there's a life insurance person, right? There might be different aspects of that in their lives. Maybe an estate attorney, hopefully, that helps them sort of plan for their ultimate demise and sort of transfer wealth and legacy planning. And then maybe somebody's in their business or is dealing with real estate. So you have all these potentially different other people that are providing some level of support and advice to help you build your wealth, but they're fragmented. And how often are they sort of working in concert with one another to help you build and manage and protect all that you're building towards to support your life? And that's what ends up happening. And examples of how this actually physically shows up for us, not just the advisor pool, but then it could be a tax strategy that's only focused on a given year, but it doesn't find its way into the broader plan of what are you trying to build? Where does that money go? What ultimately going to help support from investment, education, whatever it is. Like, where does it fit into the broader plan? You may have some investments that are kind of working right in the background, but how does it tie into kind of your current and future life goals and the timing of all of that? It's can almost feel like a set it and forget it sort of mode. And it's not really intentionally designed to help support you in what actually you're trying to do with your life. I often hear this from people when they're thinking about their insurances. They exist in some capacity, whether it's through their employer, which they may not have looked that closely into how they work or how much they really support them or not. And then sometimes they get the question, I have this thing, but I'm not sure why it exists and why I have it and how it functions. And so that's a symptom of kind of the challenges I think most people, families and business run into, is like, how do you connect the dots across all these different areas of my life that creates a functional system that isn't a cookie cutter thing for everyone, but is uniquely fit to what you're trying to build and what's important to you and where you're trying to head, right? If it isn't, then you kind of just have a potentially some good activity with unique aspects of them that really are not really functioning as well as they could be. And people are starting to get wise to that, right? And this may be you listening. Like, you're just curious. Like, I just don't feel like there's something just isn't working somewhere. I just can't pinpoint it. And it's probably creating levels of not only stress and worry, but certainly from a financial perspective, inefficiencies. And listen, I get it. I went through that for myself. I was working my job back in the day before starting this business. I thought that too. Things were working well, doing the right things. And really when I stepped back, I realized that I kind of just had a mishmash of things, right? And I didn't know how they really functioned properly together and how could they help each other, right? Be more productive, right? They're not just kind of isolated things that kind of, you have little parts, but they're a part of a broader system. And how do they function well together to ultimately provide me the income, support, protection, all those things that really keep me focused on what's most important, which is my family and life and all the things in life we're trying to build. And, once I had to step back and really examine all of those things, it became easier. You almost had to act like a designer for yourself. A lot of people didn't have that. I didn't have it too. Someone to help design those things. And really, in a go forward basis, help me make better decisions as I was deciding things, right? Because I remember back in the day looking at some shiny objects, different types of investments. And so I have to step back. Where does it fit? How does it fit into everything else that I'm doing and where I'm going with the family? And so those are all things that, I had to get clarity from my own self. So I understand the challenges that you may be facing. How does this actually impact your life, right? That's really ultimately what happens. You can have all these things, but what is it really doing to potentially cause you to have losses or inefficiencies? And as I alluded to earlier in this podcast, it's where we're seeing it now is people are coming back, they're paying more taxes than necessary. And that's just a reality. And then people who are more successful, just the problem becomes a lot more apparent. And it isn't that you're doing anything wrong. I think it's just the lack of sort of coordination around that and advice around that to help see how it can fit broadly into your world. So it just becomes a bigger problem as you're doing better in life and business. And so that's one of the bigger ones where I see it really show up, because even if you do some tax planning and then it's like, well, where does it fit to, how does it help you build wealth, broadly speaking, for where you're going in life, and connecting those dots and be intentional with those things, right? It isn't just a one sort of decision in a particular year, but how is that helping you build this for longer term, your wealth and sort of your security around your finances. I see this often too, the holding excess cash, and it's because it's not sure what to do with it, right? Worries about the economy or the interest rates or where things are going with the war, whatever it is. And it puts people in a position of not knowing what to do with their money. So you just kind of stash it into something that is actually designed to actually lose value over time, right? We're looking for inflation. That's at the target. So it's just by design that you're going to lose value and purchasing power with that without doing anything. But I'm not saying don't have it, but understand how it fits into your world and what's supporting now and in the future for your plans, and then sort of acting appropriately in terms of your capital allocation, where you're deploying cash. And in a lot of cases too, where it happens too, where we design things to spend, you build up and then liquidate it, and basically stops the compounding of assets, right? That is where, that concept of compounding over time is important, right? For all heart of this concept, the longer we have to compound things, the better, right? It gets bigger towards the end. The vast majority of people's wealth happen toward the end. But the way we are taught and positioning some of our wealth is that we're going to build it up and just spend it, right? Which is seemingly a logical approach, but you stop the compounding of significant wealth that happens actually in the end, and we're cutting it short. And so these are just some of the concepts that are kind of these silent wealth drainers that really can really harm people and make them having to work even harder when they're building up, because there's these sort of inefficiencies and drag on their wealth. Other things to think about, which I kind of alluded to earlier on, is that there's so many different types of advisors. And in the world of finance today, it's almost like a chessboard where you're trying to figure out who's controlling what piece of the board do you control, but they're not looking for the bigger picture typically, right? Because they have their own chunk that they're trying to control and support. And I'm not judging people for that they're doing anything wrong. It's just the way this positioned today, right? They're incented to kind of make sure that they get the most out of the pie, right? And for whatever reason, and that's what's happened. And so the question is, how are they helping you think broadly about where you're allocating dollars for whatever purpose you're thinking about? Obviously, optimizing for taxes, again, which is a big component, because again, for those who are successful, that can turn into 30 to 50, 60% of the money you flows through your life that goes elsewhere, right? And that you can't use to enjoy, save, protect your family, and grow wealth. And that could be a huge wealth drainer. And you actually have sometimes some people have lack of protection on things, and it could be things around asset protection if you get sued, obviously health, life insurance, disability, and trying to coordinate all those things that you don't want to happen, but are they positioned in a way to kind of support what you would want to have happen if those things did happen to you in life, right? You don't have to think about it. People are, I heard the other day, it was like, I think I may have, say too much life insurance. I said, well, how did you get it in the first place? What were you trying to do? What would you hope to have happened if that is needed? And so these are very important questions to say, what would you want to be able to respond with in life, right? Having liquidity is good, because opportunities are going to come. Would you want to be in a position to be able to fund those things? Or do you want everything tied up in your home, for instance, right? By paying down a mortgage. So these are very coordinated, thorough, deeper conversations to have. But unfortunately, it can get missed. And so a lot of opportunities and inefficiencies are built. And I imagine I've seen it from people, and then they are unsure of what they're doing. They're just questioning more things, and it just kind of, again, breeds very simple stress and worry that things are maybe not working as well. And again, this is where you might be asking, am I doing it right? And, you ask the internet or chat or whatever, definitely you'll get a whole host of answers that you're going to have to wade through. And, obviously it begs the question, should I be doing more or less, or going to other areas? And I'm very much an advocate of that exploration, but it can be unwieldy to sort of digest all of it and kind of figure out. But ultimately, you got to ask yourself, for what purpose? What is it helping you build, protect, grow, transition to, do in your life? Ultimately, if you can answer that question, it becomes just a numbers game, right? And then the strategies and tactics and products and service have certainly less meaning if you're not connecting it back. And so that's very key for you to consider. And, outside the inefficiencies and such, I think really at the heart of these things, and I'm a more positive guy in general, but I think there are missed opportunities that some people just are not privy to, because they're they have maybe not coordinated these things as well as they would like. So you may have liquidity events that come into your life that you weren't prepared for, and now you're not positioned. What am I going to do with it, right? You have income timing that might be off, especially if you're a business owner, or bonus structures. And so there's a lot of reaction to things, right? Selling a home, right, with a massive capital gain. Right now I have taxes. Well, that's probably something to think about beforehand. So this is really evidence of why proactive planning is so key to anything, obviously financialized, because there's so many things that can happen that we cannot predict that kind of fall in our steps. And we can either react and sort of wrestle around with fewer options, or say, hey, what can help put me in a position that I have way more options to pull from? And even if things don't work out as well as I'd hoped, that we're still positioned to do and live the life that I want. That's ideal. I think most people would want in their lives. They just have to think through how to position their wealth and how to manage it in a way that gives them the ability to respond quickly and not just react. So what's really at the heart of all of this? Why does this happen? Obviously, we talked about how, the disjointed, siloed nature of the industry, and it's not really, there's plenty of strategies out there and products and services. So that's not the issue. It's, in my mind, this sort of distinction. There's a kind of this distinction between director versus doer, right? Doers in the financial world, right? Again, not judging whether they're good or bad, it's just the way it's structured. You have a CPA or tax pro doing your taxes, right? Doing your books, right? You have a financial advisor managing your investment. You have the insurance agent helping you place certain insurance. And these are all very important aspects to get things done and execute. Absolutely important. I think what is missing and what's now putting most heads of families and businesses in that role is a director, right? The person designing how these things work, how they're coordinated together. And that is now a role that's been positioned and put on most people, right? That we're never trained on any of these things. And right, you're busy in your jobs or your businesses, other things that are really just more passion for you anyway. And so it really puts people in a difficult position to play that role. And so this is why we start seeing these things, that some things are disconnected, right? Because time, expertise, right? It just it can be difficult to manage for people. And that's why you have things where you run into people that don't even have like a basic will in place or estate plan, right? Things that we know we're going to die and leave this earth, but a lot of folks haven't been able to prepare for it. And I'm not judging people for that. It's just what's happened in the industry because of this. And now people are put on sort of, are in a riskier position than they need to be in a lot of scenarios. And, but you're putting most families and heads of households in difficult position. It's like building a house with just the parts and just the laborers, but there's no one being the general contractor or the architect to build these things, to map it all out, right? Having a business without a CEO, it's kind of just all parts kind of moving around, functioning, but there's no cohesion to it. So without a director in place, it's as if there's no really any real true system in place, unfortunately. You kind of just have activity, which again can feel good, but then when you layer it back, there's kind of missed opportunities and inefficiencies. So let's shift gears. Like, there's definitely, I'm not going to be able to answer because everyone's situation's personal, right? But coordination can happen, right? And to me, how you define it really is that when all your financial decisions are made in the context of a whole system, right? And this is ultimately what this is about. Obviously, we're trying to build as solid a foundation and system that, can help you deliver the life you really want now and in the future, but give you an opportunity to respond even if things don't work quite exactly how you planned, because that is something I could probably guarantee, can't guarantee too much around the financial space, is that things will change, things will evolve, but how is your system designed to put you in the best position to respond properly or as much as you want, and then that you can make the best decisions along the way and see how it reverberates through your system, right? here's examples like tax strategy. We talk about this. Let's save money in taxes. Everyone wants to do that. But if you do those sorts of things, where is the money that you save? Where is it going? How's it being used to build wealth elsewhere or create some other path in your life? Having that sort of connection point is a simple example of that, right? You have liquidity that's tied up, some liquidity available somewhere. What's the plan for that, right? Is that meant to support a new business venture or a piece of real estate or whatever it is, right? What is that sort of plan and action, and how do we do that? And then how does things around risk management around your assets and your income, your life, all those things fit into this, into your kind of protecting all those things I call the balance sheet of your life, right? Your home, your assets, investments. You in particular, you as the asset to create value and income in life is the biggest asset, I think. How are you protecting the heck out of that thing? Because that is the most important piece that could crumble down if not fully done. So this is where they all kind of fit together, not only just for, say, quote unquote retirement, but how that plays out in legacy planning down the road and for future generations, if that's important to you. So it's a different lens to some degree because, we can easily put, and I fell prey to this certainly in my lifetime, early in my life, is we're putting money first. That was the indicator of success. That's a goal. That's what we're hyper focused on. I wake up thinking, what's my bank account, and sort of create some stress versus what should be most important. And I've come to even just grips with it, is your life has got to be the first important thing that you design. What are you building toward? What kind of life do you actually want to live? What do you want to do in your life? And how does the money best support it, right? In your values, the way you think, and ultimately what's important to you. And then you can design the system to best support it. And then come the product strategies and all the things that are there. And then obviously along the way, you're tweaking it and optimizing it, just like any system is required, right? You're not just going to create one and just it stagnates, right? It's going to evolve over time. That's just reality. We got to, what's that concept? We're either growing or dying, right? And so that's the concept with this, but having a good foundational system in place will allow you to evolve and grow as you grow and your life changes. So I've given you kind of obviously a lot of high level things around this, and hopefully, you have some time to think about this for yourself, but how can you even get started, right? And I'm not here to give you specific advice on you because everyone's situation is different, and this is not meant for financial advice, but this is more to ask better questions, even of yourself, of your spouse, right? The things that you're doing in life and asking simple questions, right? What is all this actually for? What are we building towards? And to that point around connection, like for all the parts in our life what we're doing, well, how do they actually connect in some manner? And asking even your advisors these things that maybe you have curiosities on, that, and maybe they can help you with those things, right? To help you better connect how these all things fit together, so you have a much more cohesive system that functions more smoothly. And Zoom, this is one thing I always do is we can get too enamored with a product or rate of return or the very more tactical level, but I would encourage you to also just think zooming out a bit before making decisions, right? We can easily fall prey to making isolated decisions without stepping back from it to understand how it impacts other things and really start thinking about this as a system. How do they connect together, and what impact could it have to other things that you're doing financially, and where you're headed most importantly, right? Where are you leading towards and how that could impact things, right? Here's a simple one, right? If I'm going to make an investment into something that has less liquidity, more growth and upside, but I may need that money to support something in the near term very shortly, that's going to cause an issue with the system, right? It's going to not work in a manner that is going to support kind of things evolving over time. And it might put you in a position to have to sell something that you didn't want to sell, right? So these are all very simple examples of it, but having that deeper thought around how the decisions you make, how they fit, how they impact the other aspects of your life and plans that you may already have with your future. And then I guess for folks who are looking to get help, like even asking your current advisors, like, is anyone even thinking this way to help think about your financial life holistically? And maybe they're already thinking that way and have considered it, and maybe soliciting their help to help you be a thought partner. I mean, that's what I think most advisors should be doing, or I think most of them are doing this, but hopefully helping you just make better decisions and think deeply about what's going on, not just telling you what you should invest in, right? Helping you step back and understanding how it fits into the bigger picture, and getting help so you can make the best decision that's right for you. And if there is anyone, then you obviously recognize there's a gap, right? And that's something you might need to address. So this is where we'll kind of end on that note. Hopefully this is giving you some food for thought as you're thinking about your own situation. At the end of the day, money is important, right? It's a resource to drive our life, gives us the things that freedom to maybe control what we could control and do the things we want to do for ourselves, for our families, our communities. But it's really about designing that life, right? And having the wealth system that best supports it. And, that's where it requires intentionality. And I don't think you build wealth randomly, right? Some people may get lucky with it, but I think for most people who are building it, they're doing it with intentionality. And that's how you build true wealth. And I think that's something that's doable with the right people and mindset around it. So I hope this was helpful for you. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Perennial Pride Podcast.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride Podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.